Have Mary Moon and the Wailing at Windmere Hollow. It was the kind of village that time forgot, nestled between the chalk hills and ancient woodlands of southern England. It had seen Romans march, witches burned, and more than a few hauntings over the years. But when the wailing began, a sound like the sea weeping through a rusted flute, even the crows stopped cawing. And even more portentously, the pub shut early. That was when Mary Moon was called in. Mary Moon wasn't your average healer. She was a white witch, a Reiki healer, a crystal whisperer, and a proud pagan. She wore moonstone pendants for intuition, copper bangles for energy flow, and kept her tarot deck wrapped in the finest silk, and never far from her hand. With her eyes like forest shadows and hair darker than a raven's wing, she was a vision, and entirely disinterested in the compliments she drew from passing strangers. Her spirit guide, Margaret, was less modest. "Did you see that farmer gawping at you, love? Practically dropped his turnips," Margaret scoffed, perched cross-legged in the front seat of Mary's battered Morris Minor. Though being a spirit, she didn't technically sit on anything. "I'm trying to focus," Mary muttered, navigating the narrow lane up to Windmere Hollow. "Well, I'm just saying, if I still had hips, I'd shake 'em, love." The village was gathered by the old standing stone, murmuring with that particular tension that comes just before a thunderstorm. Or in this case, something older and stranger. A wiry man with rheumy eyes stepped forward. "It's the Banshee," he said. "Every night since Lammas, she's cried. From the hollow, we can't sleep. Livestock's gone skittish. Milk is curdling. And Mrs. Harrow's hair's turned white." Someone else in the crowd pointed out that Mrs. Harrow's hair had been white for many years. Mary crouched beside the stone. The energy was thick, and she could just hear a faint ringing. The air was thick and electric with sorrow. "I'll need you branches, rowan berries, a black candles, and silence when I begin," she said calmly but assertively. "Banshee's bad luck," muttered one villager. "No," Mary corrected gently. "She's a warning. She weeps for the dying, or for those whose passing wasn't honoured." That night, beneath the waxing moon, Mary laid out her circle at the edge of Windmere Hollow. She marked the ground with salt, positioned quartz and onyx stones in compass points, and lit the black candle. She sprinkled dried rosemary for remembrance and whispered in Old English, invoking spirits of place and peace. Her voice, melodic and sure, wove through the trees. "Ancient Mother, hear my plea. Let grief unbound now come to me. If tears you spill for a soul unblessed, show me what has caused such unrest." The air chilled, fog curled low over the grass, and then the wail. "Ooh, ooh." It came from the hollow itself, mournful, feminine, full of a grief that pierced the bones. The candle flickered violently. Mary stayed still, breathing softly, rooted. Ooh, ooh. A figure formed in the mist. A tall woman, her hair as white as milkweed, eyes hollow, mouth parted in a cry of ages. She hovered just beyond the circle's edge. Speak, spirit, Mary said. You are safe. The Banshee trembled. He was buried with no name, cast out for love. Margaret, invisible but ever attentive, muttered, Oh good, a scandal, my favourite. Who was he? Mary asked softly. My son, the Banshee replied, Thomas. He loved a stable boy, a forbidden love in those days. They found them, drowned him in the brook. No rites, no stone. Mary's heart ached. You've mourned all this time. I cannot rest until he remembered. Woo! Just for you, Rowena. The next morning, Mary gathered the villagers and led them to the old brook at the edge of the hollow. There among the reeds was a crooked marker, a stone barely taller than a boot. Using ash, chalk and petals, she inscribed Thomas's name anew, planted wild rosemary and foxgloves, then sprinkled lavender over the water. The village priest, surprisingly cooperative, offered a quiet prayer. Mary raised her arms. This soul is no longer forgotten. May his name be spoken and his rest be deep. The wind hushed. A single skylark sang overhead. And in the mist, only Mary saw the Banshee smile before she disappeared with a final wail. Woo! She dissolved into the sunlight. Later, back at her ivy-clad cottage, Mary sipped nettle tea while Margaret hovered over the boot shelf, flicking through an old herbal manual. You know, Margaret said, for a weeping spirit of doom, she was quite sweet. Grief does strange things, Mary replied. You ever mourned like that? Mary looked into her tea, her eyes far away. Not yet, but I've felt the tug of despair. I've been close. Margaret floated down beside her. Well, if you ever need a good cry, I know a Banshee with a flexible schedule. Mary laughed, her smile warming the room. Thanks, Margaret. Windmere Hollow slept in peace once more, but the veil between worlds never stayed still for long, and Mary Moon would always be ready when it thinned. And there we have it, our Mary Moon.